Chords are meant to convey different emotion, whether that be sad, happy, angry, whatever it may be. Your chords and your chord progression are going to convey some kind of emotion. And if you're not using that to your advantage, you're missing out. Coke Zero, because we're going to take your chord progression game from 0 to hero. Let's talk about chords. Now, the reason chords convey these different emotions, and I hate to say it, but it's because of music theory. So if you wanted to convey an emotion of happiness, you would want to have major chords like this. And adding in that major seventh, it enhances that happiness by adding in this feeling of warmth and joy. So when you're making your chord progression as a whole, it's important to think about the emotions you're trying to convey throughout. And we just have a C major 7, F major 7, G major 7, and then a C major 9 chord here. Now on the opposite side of things, for conveying these emotions of sadness, we want minor chords, just like this. And you can tell it's a minor chord because of the minor third interval here, because on top of it, it will have this like bigger space, and that's a major third interval. The C to the E, that's a major third. But minor chords are central to conveying sadness, just because their tonality is darker and kind of more introspective. But you can really add on to that complexity that the introspection brings by throwing in a minor 7. So if we build this whole progression out just focusing around minor 7th chords, we can get a whole progression that's going to sound sad altogether. And just to mix it up, I'm ending on that A minor 9th chord. So in total, we have an A minor 7th, D minor 7th, E minor 7th, and then an A minor 9th chord. For all my trap producers, you want to convey an emotion of aggressiveness a lot of the times. That's how you get those hard-hitting beats. So what you want to use is power chords. These are really common in opium beats, yeet beats. And all that means is you have the first note of your chord and the 5th note of your chord. So you make your triad and just remove that middle note. And because of the relationship between these two notes, it's going to sound really powerful. And that's going to give it that aggressive, punchy vibe. But it's also important to build some tension throughout. So what you want to do for that is throw in some diminished chords. And you can tell it's a diminished chord because those minor third intervals that we talked about before, you just have 2 of them. And those chords sound really tense. Minor chords too are good to add in for trap beats just because they have that dark vibe still. They don't always have to be used for sad beats. And my progression here is just an F sharp power chord, B diminished, C sharp minor, and then I finish off on a G sharp power chord. Getting into some of the more complex emotions, we've got nostalgia. So a big thing for this nostalgic vibe you want to create is using 7th chords. And that just means you've got your triad down here, then you're skipping one of your notes in the scale and adding the note above that. Now specifically for nostalgia, you want to use minor 7th chords, because these chords create a sense of longing and reflection. Another thing that you can do is use suspended chords like this, specifically suspended 4th chords. And all that means is you just take that middle note in your triad, 3rd, and move it up to the 4th. That's why it's called the suspended 4th. And because of this interval between the C and the G, it's going to create this nostalgic vibe. And you can also add in some 9ths. And to do that, you just need to do the same thing as what you did with the 7th. Skip the next note in the scale and then go up 1. But to make this more nostalgic, I'm going to remove the 7th and end on an A minor 7th chord. So I just have a D minor 7, G sus 4, C major 9th, and then an A minor 7. Now for those times when you want to create this sense of peacefulness, major 7th add 9 chords are going to be your friend. So here I've got an F major 7th chord, and here I want to do a C major add 9, which is what we did before where we added in the 9th and didn't have the 7th. And these chords create a really calm and tranquil vibe. And because of that 9th, the extension in the chord, it's going to add richness without that unwanted tension. So we just have an F major 7th chord, C major add 9, A sharp major 7, and then a G major 7th chord. let's say you just want to make something that's really tense and suspenseful. That's where you want dominant 7th chords. Because they have this diminished chord inside of them, it's going to create this tension that's just not going to get resolved, and it's going to make the listener anticipate resolution. And to add in a little bit more tension, what you can do is add in some augmented chords. That's where you have that major 3rd interval with a major 3rd interval stacked on top of it. These chords sound really tense and they have that unresolved tension. And you can make it a little bit more complex by throwing in a 7th. So for this chord progression, we have the G7, C7, F7, and then the G augmented 7th. Now, tension doesn't always mean that your chords are going to sound unsettling. So to create that mysterious unsettling vibe, you're going to want to use minor chords with added 6th, and that's just where you're adding the 6th note of the scale from your root note of the chord. You can also use diminished 7th chords to get that same sound. And again, you just have all these minor intervals stacked on top of each other, so it's going to sound really dark and unsettling. And again, to have that dark vibe, I'm going to throw in a minor chord here and end on a minor chord with an added 6th. So the chord progression is we have an E minor 6, G sharp diminished 7th, A minor, and F sharp minor 6. Steering away from those dark, unsettling kind of chords, hopeful chord progressions can be made by using some of those add 9 chords that we talked about. Again, you're just adding the 9th note in the scale from the root note of your chord. And you can also use suspended 2nd chords to create that uplifting sound. And just like the suspended 4th chord, suspended 2nd chord is pretty much the same thing. You're taking that middle note in your triad and just moving it down to the 2nd note from your root note. And having my chord progression ascending like this too is going to add to that uplifting, optimistic sound. So my chord progression is just a C major add 9, F sus 2, G major add 9, and an A major chord. So instead of that joyful, happy vibe, we can create a melancholic sound by using minor 7th chords, as well as minor add 9th chords. So for my chord progression, I just have a D minor 7th, a G minor 7th, an A minor add 9, and then I finish up on a C major add 9. For those smooth, sexy, romantic sounds, you'll want to use some major 7th chords. And fun fact, major 7th chords are just major chords with a minor chord stacked on top. You can also use major 6th chords to create that warm, intimate sound you're looking for. For my chord progression here, I just have an A major 7, D major 6, E major 7, and F sharp minor 7. You can put that all together to create these complex and gorgeous sounding chord progressions that convey the emotions you want. By the way, I dropped a music theory video for producers talking about chords and the best practices that you should be using while making your chord progressions. I'll link that up above. But putting all this knowledge together that you just gained, you can create chord progressions that convey the exact emotions you're trying to give off. And that will let you take your producing to the next level.